Has your marriage ever been in a crisis and you've been looking for help? Have you thought, how can I find a good marriage counselor? Someone that I can trust, someone that can help us?
We've done marriage counseling and coaching for over 30 years, and we've seen some really good ones, and unfortunately, we've seen some really bad ones.
Yeah.
So today, we're going to give you 3 simple steps to make sure you get a good marriage counselor. Thank you for joining us on I Have a Voice. Before we go into the 3 simple steps to get a good marriage counselor, the question is, why marriage counseling is a good idea? Well, first of all, just financially, it's very much of an investment. It does cost, but it's a lot cheaper than a what?
A divorce.
Yeah.
I always say my brother-in-law and sister-in-law are both lawyers, and we're both counselors. They look at our house, look at their house. Look at their cars, look at our cars. I'm happy they're successful, but there is a big difference.
The other good idea to have marriage counseling is that divorce has devastating effects.
Yeah.
Look, on the couple, if you're struggling with breaking up, that's devastating for you, but it's also devastating for the children.
Yeah.
It's devastating for the extended families, devastating for mutual friends, for your finances, for your community. So there's so many losses involved with divorce. So our encouragement is always do whatever you can to try to make it work. And really what we have found that if both parties are willing, no matter what the offenses are, marriages can be transformed. And that's the good news that we want to tell you today.
Yeah.
Is that we've seen some really very, very difficult marriages transformed, with the help of God and also 2 willing people.
Yep.
Then that can happen for you.
Well, the thing is that a lot of people, when they're talking about counseling, they think crazy. They don't really understand what counseling is or coaching. A marriage coach, a marriage counselor. When they hear the word marriage, they hear crazy, and they don't want to be considered crazy. Counseling is not about crazy. Coaching is not about crazy. I mean, if you're an athlete and you're an okay athlete, a good athlete, but you want to be at your best, you get a coach.
Yeah.
And if you really want to be good, you get your own personal coach.
Yeah, that's true.
So
That's true.
this is what it is.
So there's no shame in
No.
going to see a marriage counselor.
No.
So what are the 3 steps? Simple steps in finding a good marriage counselor. Well, step number 1 is do the research. 3 things that you can do to do the research. Number 1, you can go to Google and just put marriage counselor near me. And
I got one near me.
Me too. And you can see this is what comes up here locally. Yeah. I've been blessed to be able to come up high in the Google ranking, but you can find counselors near you through that, browse through some of those. The second good research option is Psychology Today has a website, and you can put your zip code in there. And here's an example of our local zip code, 70124, what comes up. And there's profiles of counselors. You can actually read their profiles. You can take a look at them first, read their profiles, read about their philosophy, get a feel of who they are, and that's also a good place. Also on the Google, you can look at some of the recommendations. Counseling's a little different in a sense that it's a little harder to get recommendations for that than, say, buying a refrigerator.
Right.
Because people don't want to know, look, I've been in counseling, so
that's a little rare. I mean, for us, everything is confidential. Everybody that comes, they come through, privacy, complete privacy. There's lots of rules for us. What you hear here stays here. You're bound by law. So, I mean, your information is definitely protected. So if you don't want to say that, you've been to counseling, then for us as therapists and counselors and coaches around the world, in America, we don't always get an advertisement.
Right, you don't always get a review. But we
don't always get a review, exactly.
But we do get reviews. Some people say, I don't care. This has helped us so much.
Yes.
And here's a review. We've been blessed by that. But it's not as common as other areas, right? The third thing you can do in your research is ask, if you're in a church, ask your pastor, if you have a rabbi or whomever, ask a religious leader any recommendations. They sometimes have a pulse on that. Respected health care, maybe your doctor. And also think about any of your friends that have gone through a rough patch and have gone to a counselor.
And maybe you don't know, but maybe you know that they had some issues, and then you just ask them, I was thinking about seeing a counselor. Did you ever see one, or do you know anybody that maybe that is a counselor? You know, sometimes people know people that are counselors, but they've never been to them.
Yeah, so word of mouth, do your internet
Yeah.
research, go to Psychology Today, and that'll be a good basis for finding a counselor. Let's get into step number 2. It has 2 parts, finances and face-to-face
Yeah.
or internet. When we're talking about finances, we're talking about, are you paying out of pocket or are you using insurance?
Right. I'll go here. I remember when my family of origin, when we got into counseling, and I was 21 years old. So I'm 62 now. And in those days.
Looking good for 62.
Thank you, honey. It's not easy being 62. But in those days, you paid cash. So what I learned, you know, through my growing in this area is that you invest in yourself.
Yeah.
You buy a car, you got to pay for it. You buy a house, you have to pay for it. You want to go to college, you have to pay for it. You want to go to a certain kind of school, you have to pay for it. So if you're investing in your own health, your own relational health, your own spiritual health, your own marriage, your children, parenting, whatever it was, for me, it was always, when I was younger, you don't get your nails done, you don't get your hair done, you know, you give up certain things. Instead of going to the gym, you run outside, you know, you find ways to save that money and put it in another place. Yeah. So this is a long-term investment. I always tell people counseling is like going to the dentist. It is a necessary thing for all of us because it's a lot of education.
Here comes the drill.
Yes, here comes the drill. Okay, but sometimes you need a root canal. But you don't need a root canal every time you go to counseling. And you don't go to the dentist all the time.
Yeah.
So you want to invest in that in the sense that this is about you and everything that is important to you. And then when we're talking about it right now, we're talking about your marriage. That's something that you chose. Yeah. And maybe there's some stuff that's off or something that's happened, a traumatic thing. Yeah. But it's so worth it.
That's such a good point because, you know, both you and I had a history of, before going into the profession, doing counseling.
Oh, definitely. Being in it.
And some of the skills that we both learned there.
Yeah.
Have made our marriage really easy.
Yeah, and how long have we been married?
31 years.
31 years.
So,
and this is not my first go around. This is, unfortunately, this is my second, but it's his first.
Yeah, and how do you put a price on the investment we made then?
Yes.
To have 31 years of basically an easy marriage.
It really is.
And I promise you, if we didn't do the counseling, it wouldn't have been easy.
No.
So the investment in yourself,
yes.
There's no greater investment than you can make but in
yes.
yourself. But back to the point of finances,
yes.
You may have good insurance sometimes.
Right.
Like for us, we've been doing counseling for years, so we don't have to deal with the insurance and the headache of hiring another person to file the claims, fight for the money, and so forth. For us, we only do cash, but there's other therapists that will private pay.
Right, we pay taxes.
Yeah. But there's other therapists that do insurance. So you have to figure out what's affordable, what's the level of investment you're willing to make, and will you do out of the pocket or do you want to use insurance?
One of the things I tell people when I talk to them about insurance is that in that situation, when you go in and you call your insurance company, I tell them to call their insurance company when they find out we're private pay and say, ask them certain questions. You know, how much do you pay? What is my co-payment? How many sessions do I get per year? And is this a lifetime? Because you want to know if I get 10 sessions, a whole lifetime. Do I want to use that now or do I want to save that because there may be something else I need and I want to pay for this right now? So just so you make a very clear decision.
Yeah. A common question we also get is how many sessions, married couple might call, say, how many sessions do you do with a married couple?
Right.
And so it depends on two things. One is the intensity of the problem. Obviously, the more intensive the problem, the longer it's going to take. But in general, I mean, I see marriage counseling anywhere from 3 to 10 sessions. It's not a real long-term deal. I know you're probably in the same range. Some counselors have philosophies that, you know, they like to come every week for a year and a half, 2 years.
And I used to be that way. I mean, a long time ago, I'd say, 25 years ago, 20 years ago, that was the typical thing where you had your every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. And that was yours for a year. And then we re-looked at that and, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
Other people do that. For us, we do it a little different.
Yeah. So how many sessions? It depends on the counselor's philosophy and the intensity of the problem.
Exactly.
The third question in step 2 is, do you want to meet face-to-face or would you like to do via internet? I mean,
Right.
with the pandemic, that opened up a whole new world
Right.
of counseling where it became a lot more common. I mean, I had a client recently who was wanting to do internet because they live in a small town, North Louisiana, and they didn't want to have a local counselor in
Right,
their
because everybody knows
business.
them.
Right. And so they were looking for someone that was removed from the town. It worked out really well. So you need to ask yourself, do you want to do it face to face or via internet? I know we both do face to face counseling, but we
Yes.
also have a handful of clients that we do
Yeah.
via the internet.
Yeah, I have some clients that I've done a year and a half with in California. And
Coaching, huh?
Yeah, coaching, where we do like once a month. You know, it just really depends. I mean, the thing about the internet is once you start doing it, you feel like you're there. I mean, we all kind of used to that now because of COVID, but they both work.
Yeah, so step 2 is figuring out your finances,
Yeah.
out of pocket or using your insurance. And then also, do you want face to face or do you want to do via internet? Answer those questions is step 2. Step 3 is once you narrow it down to counselors that you
Right.
think you'd like to work with, always advocate interviewing the counselor. Call them and say, would you call me? I have some questions to ask you. And what are some good questions? Obviously, what are your rates?
Right.
Do you take insurance?
Right.
How many times do you typically see a couple for marriage counseling? I mean, we tend to be more on the higher end
Yeah.
of the counseling spectrum.
Yeah.
But if you think about seeing, say, myself 5 times at a higher rate or seeing someone else for a year and a half
At
every
$80.
week at half that rate
Right.
or a quarter or 3/4 that rate, you know, the investment is different. You end up paying more for that. So you want to get a sense of how many times do they typically see a couple for marriage counseling?
Another thing they ask too is they'll ask, do we come together or do we come separate?
Yeah.
I know for us, I think it depends on different people. We'll see people together, and then sometimes as the process is going, because nothing's very cookie cut, is that everybody's individual, that sometimes we'll say, okay, I'm going to see the husband next week, and then the next week I'll see the wife, and then we'll come back together. It just really depends.
Yeah. And then the other question you want to ask in an interview is, have you worked with this particular issue
Yeah.
before? We find like we specialize in addiction.
Yeah.
So if addiction is a problem in the marriage, you know, we have no problem dealing with that.
Right.
There's some counselors that really don't want to deal with that at all, don't have an
Right.
understanding of it. You might have a unique situation like, say, pornography addiction
Right.
or, God forbid, the loss of a child. So really put whatever the issues are, just get a feel and say, have you worked with this
Right.
before? Look, just like in any conversation, you spend 5-10 minutes with a person.
Right.
You begin to get a sense of like, this is really flown well, or like,
Right.
next
Yes,
kind of
next.
thing. And so
Exactly.
trust yourself.
Yeah, trust yourself.
yourselves and spend some time interviewing before you jump in and you invest in that.
Yes.
I know for you, I listen to you on the phone when people call. You're very warm and persuasive. Not that you're persuading, but that's all a person has to talk to you for 10 minutes and they come
I
in.
know. Well, I'm persuasive in the sense that I want them to go get help.
Yeah.
If it's with me or another person. I mean, of course I want to help people, but if I'm not the one or I can't do the job, I want them to get where they need to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in that position before. So I know what I needed when I made those calls. And I didn't have the right questions. So I try to answer questions a lot that they haven't asked. So they can know where, like this show, like where to go, what to say. And, they're like, oh, that's a lot. I can't afford that. I said, look, try this and do this. And look, if you get nowhere, then call me back, you know?
Yeah, so do those 3 steps. Step number 1, do the research.
Yes.
Step number 2, figure out the finances and whether you want to do face-to-face internet. And step number 3, call and interview the counselor. You do those 3 things and you will find a good counselor for yourself.
And, I want to say this show is all about giving what we've gotten.
Yeah.
So what I want to say to you is invest in yourself. Invest in your marriage. Do not say it's too much. It's never too much. Whatever's got to go, if you got to not go to Disney this year, if you got to not go to the beach this year, if you got to put off the new car, put it aside. Do what it takes to get the skills. Sometimes it's just a skill. Get the skills or the grieving or old wounds, messing with your marriage, old relationships. Do whatever it takes because it's worth every penny that you invest in this kind of situation.
Yeah. We also have a good resource for you. You know, our heart is we want to help not only in the New Orleans region, but as many people all over to have the most fulfilling and happy marriages as possible. And we have a playlist on our I Have a Voice channel. So, you know, like and subscribe our channel if this is helpful. And also go to that playlist called Marriage Advice. We have 53 videos on a variety of topics all about marriage, improving communication, getting over loss, how to deal with an affair, mistakes men make, mistakes women make. A lot of wonderful videos that are free for you. So take advantage of that and enhance your marriage. And one particular video that we would recommend now is we have one that's called Love Lessons, 7 Ways to Improve Your Marriage Now.
Yes.
And so we'd encourage you to click on that video and we will
see you in the next video.
God bless.